Good evening. Welcome to the Yorktown Central School District Board of Education meeting for September 26, 2016. Can I have a motion to go into executive session for the matters pertaining to employment history of a particular individual and some negotiations?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, can I have a motion to go back into public session?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Yorktown Central School District Board of Education meeting for September 26, 2016. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance that will be followed by a moment of silence for our armed forces and those in our Yorktown community who have lost loved ones, especially for Patrick Boyle, the husband of Noreen Boyle, the father-in-law of Bonnie Silver, of Francis Hutton, a former Yorktown Central School District teacher, and Carolyn Milanese, the daughter of Yorktown School District CTA Pat Richardson.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for waiting while we were a little bit late. We're going to start with we should be starting with, we forgot public comment.
There was like 9 on the list. I didn't
No, it should have been up. But we have public comment. Anybody wishing to speak on agenda-related items? It should have been up there first. Okay, now we're going to go to the superintendent's report. Ralph, it's all yours.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for being here. As the board knows, we have been involved with the lead testing as per New York State law and requirement, and Dennis Furbois is going to introduce the gentleman that we've been working close with from Berger Associates.
Thank you, Ralph. Good evening, board. With us this evening is Joe Sabaro with Lewis Berger Consultants, and they've done our first round of water testing we did before. The water sampling was enacted into law by Governor Cuomo on September 6th. So we're going to be following up with some additional water testing this week to meet the mandate of K-5 schools being done by September 30th. And then we'll be following thereafter with the high school, middle school, and that mandate's by October 31st. So Joe's just loading the PowerPoint presentation now, and then we'll have time after this for comments, questions.
Thanks for having me here this evening. So I'm just going to kind of give you an overview of the new law that was promulgated on September 6th. You're going to do the first slide. So, as Dennis said, there were no regulatory requirements to do any lead testing in schools. Can you hear this? Is this not loud enough? Can you hear that? That's better.
Yes.
Yeah, so there really wasn't any requirements for any kind of lead testing. It was all voluntary, and your school district was one of other school districts that we've been working with that contacted us and said, hey, we'd like to kind of get ahead of the curve, and we did do some targeted testing for you. So again, this was a proactive, voluntary measure. It wasn't mandated by any kind of regulatory driver. However, on September 6th, Governor Cuomo signed the emergency regulation into law. And at the same time, the Department of Health, who is mandated by the Act to enforce this law, promulgated a set of emergency regulations. So again, that came out, and basically, school districts have to test all the water from what they define as outlets, and we'll go into that in a second, by the end of October. And there are 2 target dates for the testing. The first one is coming up for pre-K through grade 5, and that's the end of September 30th, which is this Friday, I think. And by the end of October the 31st, you have to have all the middle and high schools tested as well. So those are the target dates in the new law. And again, some key definitions in the law, and a lot of it's surrounding this first one, is what is an outlet? So they define an outlet as a potable water fixture that's currently, or as they define, potentially used for drinking or cooking purposes. And that includes a bubbler. A bubbler is a little fountain that's in a classroom. It just kind of bubbles up. Drinking fountains, faucets would be included. And this potentially used thing has created quite an issue, because when we did the targeted sampling earlier for your district, why would you test a bathroom sink? Does a kid drink out of a bathroom sink? Probably not. And the EPA 3T guidance, unfortunately, was not adopted by the Department of Health when they promulgated these regulations. We're not looking at the 30-second flush samples. We're only looking at the first sample, what they call the first draw sample. So that is the next definition here in this action level, which we've kind of latched onto. The media has latched onto this number. It's 15 parts per billion. So that's the level. That's the magic number. If it's over 15 parts per billion, you got to do something. So these first draw samples, next slide. That's a little sample of a bottle. It just goes into a little 250 ml bottle. We get up really early in the morning and come test the water before anybody moves it. It does need to sit in the pipes with, as they define in the law, 8 to 18 hours, and that's consistent with the EPA 3T guidance. However, a lot of sinks that we've encountered as we've already gotten started with some of the other school districts, the water's probably sitting in there a little longer than that. Sinks that are infrequently used, or even fountains that are infrequently used, and those are still being tested as they are. They're not going to be flushed. So anything that sits in a pipe for a while, the results most likely not going to be favorable. But that is what it is. So we are testing sinks in bathrooms, classrooms, the nurse's office, teachers' lounges, sinks that aren't accessible, or outlets that are not accessible to the children are excluded from the testing. And they're also testing as they define cold water outlets. We're not testing hot water. So if we have sinks that, especially in bathrooms where they're kind of automated and they mix the hot and the cold together, we're not testing those because they're not a cold water outlet. We were just with Putnam County Department of Health, who's been working with the state, because there's a lot of questions that consultants and school districts are asking. Well, what about this? What about that? What about a shower? What about an eye wash? We get all kinds of crazy questions. So as of now, that's our interpretation. It's clearly not a hot water, not a cold water outlet, but it's possible that the state could decide to change that. But as of now, that's the guidance we have. Again, so cold water outlets. Next slide. Okay, so again, the requirements are for the water to be sitting in the pipes 8 to 18 hours. What they wanted to really get, and what EPA, the 3T guidance that they had come out with, it's been out here for, I don't know, maybe more than 10 years. And that is to kind of get what are these normal use patterns? What's typically coming out of these outlets or fountains? So no flushing. If you've conducted, since we've already conducted some testing for this district, as the law says here, if it's after January 1, 2015, it counts. So we're not going to retest things that passed already. They've already been tested. We can go test the things that weren't tested, which predominantly are going to be sinks. Because we really did test, I don't know if did we test all the drinking fountains? All the drinking fountains. We did test all the drinking fountains. Okay, so what happens if we have an exceedance over the 15 parts per billion? Well, the state law's got a bullet list of things that need to be done, so there needs to be some sort of what they call a lead remediation plan. So what are we going to do with this information that we now have? And how are we going to act on it? So you have to provide building occupants with an adequate supply of drinking, and the only way you would have to do that is if you shut off everything. If you have other acceptable fountains or outlets, those could still be used. So it wouldn't necessarily mean you have to shut all your water down. That is until remediation is completed, so that could be a while. And another thing is you have to report test results to your local health department. once we give them to you, and we're basically turning around the next day after we review all the data, kind of give you a little summary of what issues you may have, and then make that notification. So basically, you just need to send them a copy of the results at this point. The other next requirement in the regulation is a notification. So all staff and persons in parental relation, this is the language from the standard, students of the test results in writing within 10 business days. We just had some discussions with Putnam about what that means. And I think we're all pretty clear that it means you're going to maybe give them the summary, and you're going to need to provide them access to the, all of the sample raw data. Not necessarily a report. That's going to come a little bit later. Okay, so that's the next requirement. Then the next milestone is by October 31st. Make available on your website a list of all buildings that are determined to be lead-free. So I don't think you have any of those, so you're not going to need to do that. Right? Have a lead-free? Yeah. Okay. Okay, also making available on the school's website the results of all the testing performed, whatever lead remediation plan is going to be implemented, basically what your plans are, as soon as possible, but not more than 6 weeks after you receive the reports. So there's another timeline in there for the requirements. Okay. There also is provision for basically by the 11th, you have to basically upload your, I got the wrong slide here. You're okay. I'm the one not okay here. Okay, so the state eventually will make available for you to upload your data onto a database basically that they're going to have to make that, whatever, I'm not sure what they're going to do with it, but that'll be another requirement that you'll have to meet, is to upload that information. I really don't know what that mechanism is going to be. And last slide. Okay, waivers. I don't think you're going to be able to apply for any waivers, but there are provisions for that. If you have lead-free, or if you basically have done prior testing, if we had tested everything, you could go to the state and say, hey, we already complied with the law basically, so you would ask for a waiver. So you're not in that position, but that's available. So I guess the other big question that probably is on everybody's mind: what is the lead remediation plan? What do we do? So there are some interim things that can be done. Flushing is an interim measure that can be done. That's not a permanent measure. The state specifically has said that a flushing program cannot be a permanent solution, so it would be an interim measure. So let's say we have a bathroom sink that tests about 15 parts per billion. So what do you do with it? Well, in the interim, you could put up a little sign along with a visual aid, basically say, don't drink from the fountain, it's for hand washing only. That's acceptable. You can do the same thing with the sink. Drinking fountains, you got to shut them off. And anything they can be drinking out of. So sinks would give you some options. And then long-term solutions really are only two, right? You either got to fix it or take it out of service. They're the only two options. And unfortunately, that includes sinks that may not be used for drinking purposes, but that's how the state has promulgated the regulation at this point. Okay, any questions?
Could you explain fix? Because I know that it isn't quite so simple as just change the sink or change the faucet. So can you explain?
Or the repairs?
If you have to fix you have a sink that reads over 15 parts, whatever, what are the steps you take to do a permanent fix?
Well, invariably it's going to involve replacing plumbing at some point, because most of this lead is coming from the solder. Okay, where the joints and the pipes are put together, the old solder had lead in it. Okay, and even though it may be 50 or 60 years since that was put in, the lead is still leaching out of that. Okay, it's the same thing in your homes. So in your house, when you make your coffee in the morning, turn the water on for 30 seconds, flush it out. Otherwise, you really will get leaded coffee.
But how do you identify where the source is? Because just because I have lead in my water here doesn't mean it's coming from here. It could be coming from where? And how do you
Correct.
identify that, and how do you backtrack to know what you have to fix and what you don't?
Well, for the earlier testing, we did the 30-second draws. That's why when I mentioned earlier, the state is only interested in this first draw. They're not interested in the 30 seconds. So right now, nobody's doing that because everybody's scrambling to try to comply with the law just to get the testing done. We may have to come back and do a little bit more testing. Test it again. If we don't take a 30-second flush sample, I don't know. If I get a 30-second initial sample that fails and a 30-second flush that passes, that tells me that my source is right there, most likely the closest soldered joint. You could replace that. If I don't have that information, then it may be coming further back. So you don't want to, it might be worth, it's a good question. It might be worth doing a little bit quickie testing just on those outlets that failed. And I don't know how we're going to do that because you've already shut them off. So you're going to have to flush it before we even test it to try to determine where that source might be. But invariably, most of these are pretty close. Most of these are in the plumbing right nearby. Unless you have a bunch of sinks and a whole wing that are failing, then you can say, okay, I got a bigger problem. Okay, so most of the sampling that we've conducted, we're finding that it's pretty much localized, but there's no guarantee that that's going to be the solution. There are other sources that possibly could come from. There's some, if there's any electrical connections that are on the pipes, that could create an additional leaching source. Anything that's brass would be, brass has a little bit of it's mixed metals, and there's usually a little bit of lead in there. Even lead-free fixtures, brass ones that you buy, lead-free doesn't mean lead-free. Lead-free means less than 8% under the EPA definition. So could be some other sources. Also, you could have some sediments right in the aerators. That's another thing that could be done, get those cleaned out. Those are all the potential sources that you might run into. Not quite so easy.
No. Anybody have questions?
What's the timing of completing the testing?
For the elementary schools through grade 5, it's September 30th, and then October 31st for the middle and high schools.
Okay.
And what is the time frame for the actual permanent fixes?
There is none.
I love this state.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah,
So
I
there's
know.
no time frame. We get to just put our own time frame in place?
Until they mandate something else that will cost us more money. Any-
Yeah, the only thing that's reimbursable right now is the cost of the testing through BOCES, I guess. There's about 20 pages in the law that relate to financial issues that are not part of this presentation. There's a lot more information in there if you haven't read it. So,
Okay.
Guess we wait.
Well, can maybe Dennis give us an update on where we're?
Sure. Can Dennis give us an update on where we are with the testing and what we've done so far to remediate anything or close it down?
Sure. So as Joe alluded to, we did do the 3 T's testing back in August, and we tested all the drinking fountains in this school district. And that also included nurses' sinks, prep sinks in kitchens, as well as faculty dining sinks. And so out of the 105 samples we took, we had 3 failures at the middle school here and 5 at French Hill. So overall, very well. The 3 that were here at the middle school, one was a drinking fountain that was in a tech shop that we abandoned immediately. The other 2 were a sink in the home ec and a sink in the prep room. So under the 3 T's, the prep room wasn't even required to be sampled, but we wanted to get a flavor as to where we might be going with these science rooms. The 3 at French Hill, 3 were drinking fountains that have been removed from service, 2 were sinks. All the sinks I mentioned here at the middle school and French Hill have had the faucets replaced. We haven't retested them. We'll be doing that when we do the middle and high school in the upcoming weeks.
So the elementary schools, none of them are considered lead-free. We've had issues with this, or are there? Because you just said 2 buildings, so now the other buildings are okay?
For the sampling we did, they're okay, but they were the drinking fountains primarily, and then those 3 sinks I mentioned, the nurse, the kitchen prep and the faculty
They
dining.
didn't test any of the bathroom sinks.
We didn't
which
test
we
any
now
of the
have to.
bathrooms. We didn't test any other classroom sinks. So we have a lot of testing left to do. This week alone with the 3 elementaries, we're going to do 160 samples. That's on Wednesday. And then the high school and middle school and French Hill in the upcoming weeks will total around 220, 230 more samples.
But to be clear, up to this point in time, with all the drinking fountains where the students would potentially drink, if we would, I know that we can't look at it that way anymore, but when it was just kind of expected that that was what was tested, we were in a good place
Yes.
and are still in a good place. We just don't know what's to come when we look at the bathroom sinks and
Prep
the
room
science,
sinks.
yeah, science
Classroom
room sinks.
Right.
But in terms of the drinking faucets, we're good.
Drinking fountains, yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
We're good.
All right, we're good. Thank you very much. We love good news.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. I love New York
Did you
State.
want this, Yes.
I
All right, think about
think
it.
that.
Dennis, you also wanted to talk to the board about the green throwdown?
So, this goes to our energy throwdown that was last April 22nd through May 20th. We have certificates signed. I will have them laminated tomorrow, and we will be putting one in each school. All schools did quite well, as they usually do for this one-month challenge. This past year, Crampon was the winning school, conserving energy up to 47.5%. And again, I use the various factors. I take last year's same month and also the previous month leading into it. So, yeah, congratulations to Crampon this year. So I'll have these certificates laminated and put in their main offices.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jackie, do you want to switch the good news with the education
Yeah, have
report?
we
Good
had-
news first?
Yes, please.
Okay, perfect. So I think we're up to that good news section, Mr. DeGennaro.
Thank you, Dr. Napolitano. Good evening, Board. I'd like to first, always an honor and pleasure to be here to talk about all the good news or great news in the high school. I would like to introduce the people that I've brought with me this evening. Our 2 assistant principals, John Gallis and Debbie Brand, our director of the alternative school, Jim Emanuel, and our teacher leader of guidance, Cindy Savini. So they'll be part of this evening's presentation. Also like to mention and welcome and thank Sue McGann, one of our psychologists, for coming here tonight to listen to our good news report. Our first slide, great way to start, picking up where we left off last year with the National School District of Character Award. Clearly there'll be celebrations of that award district-wide this year. Our National Merit Scholarship commended students. This year we just found out last week that we have 8 representing Yorktown High School, and our National Merit Scholarship semifinalists, we have 4. So this week we're also in the process for our senior class of 2017, announcing our first and top decile as they prepare to go through the college process. It's important they have that information not only to celebrate, but also to further position themselves as they go into the process. Friday, Dr. Napolitano, Mrs. O'Shea joined us at the high school to not only announce and honor our valedictorian and salutatorian, who is Noor Nassar this year as our valedictorian, and Siddharth Anand. And they'll come back to you in January when we come back for good news and bring a whole bunch of students with us to celebrate and honor them. From the music department, NYSMA, we already have representatives that will be participating in the state competition in all different areas of the music program. And we already have this year, one winner of the Con Ed Award. The recipient was Alyssa Franzese, who's a Division I girls soccer player. She's going off to Stony Brook next year. And we may even have more this fall season and as we progress through the athletic season in the next 3 seasons. Obviously, a great enhancement to the high school, as we know, is the canopy, which is absolutely gorgeous, and we appreciate the support that you gave us to have that. And the tennis courts are new and being used by our tennis team right now, and our swim touch pads that are in the pool has been a great enhancement for our swim programs this season. We'll recognize a whole bunch of students and celebrate at our next Good News Report in January, and we'll bring those students so you have names and faces and can honor them as a school board. So we are absolutely off to a fast start, as the slide indicates there. Many of the things in the high school that start a year off, or at least usually or typically in the first 4 to 6 weeks of the school year, have been very front-loaded, which we're excited about. We've already welcomed, obviously, the 9th graders through our Big Buddy Day, and that's always a great way for them to start their high school experience, and it's just a great way to start that transition. Homecoming and Spirit Week Pep Rally, we just completed a traditional event, obviously, and a fun and spirited event for our students. So it is fun, and for me, it's done. We move on to the next things. Emergency drills we started. We've already evacuated to the middle school and out to the fields already, so we're conducting all of our drills, and not only have prepared our faculty and staff at the first faculty meeting, but we're training our leaders in the building, our BERT team, and working closely with Mr. Cole. Grade level assemblies. We do so much at those. We meet with all 4 grades separately. We talk about general information that they need to know and expectations, but we also talk about things that are specific to their grade level. So just some examples. We certainly, with the older students, the juniors and seniors, will talk about the college application process, deadlines, upcoming college rep visits, which have already started. Absolutely, we touch on social media, which comes into the school system every day, and we have our school resource officer, Officer Dorr, part of that conversation with our students, and he shares process and protocols and things that he experiences both in the school and as well as out in his normal police officer role beyond the school. Our club reps, we presented to our 9th graders in their assembly to get them immediately connected to programs in the school. Each of our student leaders from all of our clubs in the high school, they come in and they do a 1-minute presentation. They talk about the mission statement, they talk about first meeting and goals of the club, and again, making sure that we can get kids connected there. Certainly a big part of it is the code of conduct expectations. I always use a phrase with not only the students but the parents at back to school night, that if you're being held accountable to something, you should know about it and make sure that you read it. We don't go through it word for word, but we certainly pick out spots that we feel are areas of emphasis for us. And so much other general information. Certainly we emphasize with the sophomores right up to the seniors about the presentations that are coming for college. I was disappointed when Mr. Verbois announced Crampon won the Going Green competition, so we'll make sure that we're in the mix one of these years to win that. But certainly Going Green is a big initiative for us at the high school as well, and we do so much. We hardly do any mailings at this point. We use our website. We use so many other sources to get our information out there. We've had back to school night already, and that's always a great way for us to show the parents give the parents a taste of what their child's day is like at the high school, and show off the great teachers that we have in the building. The academic planners, our PTSA, who gives us so much support. They've not only sponsored a back-to-school breakfast for us, but they also sponsor the planners. So every student in the high school should have a planner at this point, unless they choose not to take one, but most of them really do. The college and university reps have started in the guidance council, in the guidance center. We have 1 or 2 per day, and that's posted everywhere. We make sure we get our seniors there, and some of our juniors start to come down. We've completed 2 faculty meetings already. Department meetings have started. Clinical team meetings have started, where we talk about students who are a variety of needs that they may have. Last year, you might remember, during one of our presentations, we talked about class conflicts and how we were working on a 2-year plan. I'm very happy to stand in front of you today to let you know that last year we had 15. It was the number I used in the presentation. This year, we have absolutely no conflicts in the high school, and it's something that we had been working towards with a committee in the high school going back 3 years ago, and we started to phase it out last year and really made it to the completion point this year. So how did we do that? We worked really with a committee. We looked at things. Singleton classes were reviewed. They were balanced throughout the day. We increased the utilization of ninth period. Every year we've had courses added there as well to spread out the day a little bit for the students. Where necessary, students were asked to plan over a 2-year cycle how they would take courses or make a choice. And sometimes, that's an option that families have to make. We've professionally developed additional teachers to gain AP certification. That's been a big plus for us. Again, it gives us flexibility in our schedule, and it also gives us different teaching styles to match up with the different learning styles. So our master schedule is really more efficient now more than ever. In terms of seat time and attendance accountability, we're certainly compliant. We don't have kids pulled out and expected to be in 2 places at one time anymore. And more students with lunch. Certainly we mandated for 9th graders to have that, but now more 10th through 12th graders have lunch because the schedule is spread out. So these enhancements have clearly increased the educational opportunities for our students in our entire master schedule. So we're really happy about opening school with not having any conflicts anymore. Some of the things looking forward this year that we're going to accomplish is having additional teachers to be trained this year for the 2017-2018 school year. We'll certainly work on the teams of teachers that we're going to work making those decisions in the coming weeks. Our College Board course completion and that's usually that we send our teachers out. Usually in the summertime they'll go and do that, but they have opportunities to go get trained and get a certification through the College Board to teach advanced placement courses. And we certainly have an informal mentoring program where we have a master teacher working with a teacher who's aspiring to move up in levels and teach an AP course. So those are some of the goals that we're plan on accomplishing this year. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Brand.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Debbie.
So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the Chromebook rollout. We now have all of our 9th and 10th graders have a Chromebook in the school, and we do have, I would say, about 10 or so students in the upper grades that have Chromebooks available to them if they demonstrate a need. We do have a program that's available, and we do have a few students who've already taken advantage of that program, but they do have to send home an application and demonstrate a need for that. In terms of the rollout, it went very, very smoothly this year. We with the help of Patrice and the entire tech team, we really changed the way we did it this year. Instead of trying to get it all out to every student on the Big Buddy Day, which is what we did last year, and turned out to be kind of difficult to collect all the necessary paperwork. We front-loaded the paperwork and required that students bring in the paperwork before the school year started. We also changed some of the requirements in terms of the $35 insurance program that we no longer do, and students get the Chromebooks, and they are responsible for any damages that they do incur on their own Chromebooks. We've really had very few problems, I should say, with the Chromebooks. There's been minor troubleshooting, and we do have a CTA in the library who continues to work with students who, whenever students have trouble with their Chromebooks, they bring it there, and if there's anything minor that can be fixed or addressed there, we try to do it right on site. If we do have something that's more of a major problem with the computer, we do have referrals for more intensive support, and the students still have support in that way coming out of the high school. We do also have loaner Chromebooks that students can get from the library if there is either an issue with their Chromebook where it's getting repaired, or if they possibly left it at home, or it's not charged fully or something along those lines. But again, that's really, students are getting better about managing their Chromebooks overall, I would say. And in the library, we have a lot of coordination of the logistical support of the Chromebooks. We have a lot of people working together with the Shannon Mersand, and as I mentioned before, the CTAs, and the tech support we have in the high school is excellent. We always have people there to help students out and teachers out, because we do have every 9th and 10th grade teacher also has a Chromebook, and that's really helped to enhance the use of Google Classroom. I think it's much more widespread. It's been interesting to watch how the teachers have become more tech savvy as the tool has become more available to students. I think they feel pressured and compelled to take advantage of the Google platform that we have. And coming from a home district that doesn't always use that, it's great to see how much more savvy our students are becoming working with it, and our teachers as well. It's second nature now. It's no longer, and I would say that that's true for the majority of our teachers. And I think as we move up through the high school and more students have the Chromebooks, I think it's going to help compel more of our staff to get professionally developed in that way too. So it's been a positive, I think, all around for everybody involved. Next slide, please. We also have, we're going to continue this year with a beautification committee, which we started last year. Really, the goal of the committee is to maintain the physical beauty of the school in the sense of keeping bulletin boards updated and neat. And also, one of the initiatives we started last year was a principal showcase, which was extremely successful. Basically, that showcase is looking to highlight students from each department every month. So each month we have a separate department. Each teacher nominates one of their students who have somehow stuck out to them that month or recently. It could be that they're just really working hard, they've grown tremendously, and it's been a great way to recognize not only our great students, but sometimes our students who maybe traditionally haven't been recognized, but are really doing something to show themselves as being better students. So it's been a very positive thing, and this year we're going to be we're going to have the students design the showcase itself. Becky Woolley has kind of taken that lead. Last year she did all the designing, and this year she's going to look to have the students come up with different ways to recognize the students, so it should be nice. We're also looking, we have a few ideas going out for mural creations around the school. We have different walls, as you probably know, around the high school that have been decorated by past classes. We're looking to continue that initiative with some of the other blank walls. And we have, for example, we're going to have a contest with quotes that inspire mural ideas. And so that should be happening around the building. And next slide, please. Another initiative that's starting this year is a professional development committee in the high school. This is meant to be, it's a new committee, and we have 17 faculty members from different departments who've already signed up. The goal is to share everything from just professional discussions around best practices to possibly looking at readings, maybe even if opportunity allows for it, visiting other sites to look at what other teachers do in their best practices, and just to feed our knowledge and hopefully to bring that knowledge back and turnkey it to the rest of the faculty, and to generate more discussion around best practice, and that's the goal for that. I think. And last but not least, this is the third year of the Writing Center. It's a particularly exciting year. I'm going to jump to the bottom one, or one of the bottom things here. It's a particularly exciting year for us because this is the first year we have 15 seniors, and that represented our first class of peer tutors. They're the first group of students who have only known the Writing Center, and they are the first students who are going through the entire process. So they're true veterans. And if I could tell you if you could have watched them at our Writing Center peer tutor training both in June and September, it gave you goosebumps how amazing these kids were. They took over the whole thing and they modeled for other students, and so it's really kind of becoming a cultural thing. It's so much becoming a cultural thing that we've had over 50 students who have come into the Writing Center on their own without being asked by a teacher to get help with everything from schoolwork to college essays. And that's really what you hope for with the Writing Center, is that it becomes a part of the culture, a resource that students know that they can turn to at any time. In the 2015-16 school year, we had 1,247 students who used the Writing Center. That was approximately 250 more than the year before. We had 19 teachers from 3 different academic departments use it, and we have now 57 trained peer tutors who are using it. So the Writing Center is running strong, and it's becoming more and more independent on the teacher side too, which is something that's encouraging, that it's not really administratively driven anymore. It's really something the teachers have taken over and made their own as well. And that's all for me. And next is Jim Emanuel.
Good evening. Well, if you look at the next slide, you'll notice that we have 2014, 2015 as a time frame for the alternative high school. That was when it was relocated into the high school itself. And the numbers, and the numbers there were, as you see, there were 29 students. We tried to utilize as much as we could. And then Cindy Cervini and I, who at the time was really more assigned to the program, we started to look at different ways to utilize the staff members for the next school year. And we came up with a credit recovery piece because we noticed that there was a lot of students who were having some difficulties. And we felt that utilizing the staff members that we had and using them in the proper fashion would actually be beneficial for all the students in the school and not just certain individual ones. So what ended up happening, So what ended up happening was we just went through everything. We went to, spoke to Mr. DeGennaro, went to Dr. Napolitano, and we came up with this proposal that we might as well utilize what we have and really open it up to more students. And that's what we did. So if you'll notice that we started last year, the 2015 school year is when we started this, and this is how we started out. We had the numbers there. Now, where it says NA, because at that time we didn't run none of those classes. We didn't run the American history or the economics and government. And then last year, as we started to look at the numbers in the third quarter of some of the students who could utilize a little bit more support and everything else, that's how we ended up coming up this year with having an American history class and an economics and government class. So as the numbers in the alternative high school dwindled, and as if you'll notice, the last group should be with us is the 2017-18 school year will be the final group of alternative high school students that came from up the hill and who were relocated into the high school itself. And hopefully, as we go along, I keep messing this up, I'm sorry. But as we go along, we'll continue on with the credit recovery piece, and we'll keep, encouraging students to utilize it and the staff as well. So thank you. And then I'd like to introduce Miss Cindy Savini.
Okay, so I have to be sure not to do what he did with the microphone. So if you look at my first slide, the upward trend of ACT scores, it's numbers, and numbers don't always connote good news. But this, even more than the percentage increase and the point increase, there's a lot of background, and I want to put it sort of into perspective for you so you know what those numbers are actually saying. Because to me, those numbers are better than good news. They're great news. The reason I'm choosing to actually highlight and talk a little bit about ACT scores is more and more students are taking the ACT. It seems to be a fair test. Students tend to do a little bit better than the traditional SATs. So for example, 5 years ago, we had 198 students taking the ACTs. This past year, we had 211 test takers. So you say, well, that's an increase of 13, big whoop, how big is that? But you have to think 5 years ago, we had a much larger senior class. Now our senior numbers are a little bit down, but yet the test takers for the ACT are up. So the ACT is curriculum-based for college readiness. And that works really well with our students because we do have such a strong curriculum to prepare them, not only the curriculum, but the good work of Ms. Marrow and Mr. Meltz under the PTSA that helped a program that helps prep our students, and it's very affordable rather than the traditional tutoring or the traditional companies. So we were really happy that the PTSA stepped in a number of years ago and made this available to almost all of our students. So I'm just going to look at the numbers and try and, like I said, add some words to make it more interesting to you. So our English score of 25.5. Well, according to ACT, in order to have a 50% chance of attaining a B in a college freshman English course, you would have to get an 18 on that test. Look at this, our kids are getting 25. That's really good. It tells us that 91% of the students meet the college readiness for English, and that is comparable to a state number of only 79%. So we're at 91%. That's exciting to me. Math, we're at 25.7. In order to have a 50% chance of getting a B or better in college, you would have to get a 22 in math. 80% of our students demonstrate college readiness as opposed to 67 in the state. And it goes on. Reading, we have a 25. In order to get the B, you would need a 22 or better. 76% of our students are demonstrating college readiness as opposed to 65% in the state. And lastly, science, in order to get the B, you would need a 23. Our students are getting 25.3. 73% of them are college ready for science as opposed to 58% in the state. These are not only the higher numbers from last year, they're actually the highest numbers we've had in 5 years. And I'm really happy about that, and I think it has to do with the excellent test prep that they're getting, but also the instruction they're getting in the classroom, because like I started out saying, it is curriculum based. So we're really pleased about that. We could go to the next slide. Okay. SAT-2s. So probably most of you know that it's scored on a scale of 200 to 800, 800 being a perfect score. And the scores kind of speak for themselves. They're really high, way above average. Just to tell you what an SAT-2 is, it's an hour long and it's content specific. And any student can take it. Usually they'll take the course take the test after taking an honors course, but some kids will just go in and take it if they feel like they have an affinity for the subject. It's hour long, and it tests not only their knowledge of the content, but how students apply the knowledge that they do have. And you kind of have to think of it as like an Uber Regents. They go in, it's extremely hard for an hour, but then they're out, they're done. So these are very good SAT-2 scores. And then we could go on to the next one, the AP scores. And again, that chart sort of speaks for itself. We have a number of students achieving beyond mastery, the 4s and the 5s. Generally, colleges will award college credits for a 3, 4, or a 5, and you can see far of the majority achieves the higher numbers. In fact, in one of them, I had to highlight AP Calculus, AB. 15 or 18 students, I'm not quite sure how many took it, all of them received a score of 5. So it's really excellent. And, you know, basically, some people will come back in the field of guidance and they'll say, well, some of these courses are, you're just culling, or you're just allowing the very top-notch kids to take the course. And of course, because of that, you'll score high. But many of our AP students, many of our AP courses are open to all students. So it really talks about the teaching that's going on in the classroom, because you can take top-notch students and put them in an AP calculus course, but if you're not getting good teaching in there, they're not going to score. So I'm just really pleased, because I think that those numbers say a great deal about the teaching that's going on at the high school, preparing students for those AP exams. So I'm going to hand things over to Mr. Dallas.
Good evening, everybody. Just to piggyback on data, which is what Ms. Servini was talking about, we thought it would be important to discuss a little bit about Algebra 2 Common Core, which took place this year. It was the first time that we gave the exam in the state. Just a little bit of history about Algebra 2 Trig. It's historically the most difficult math course that's given in high school. It's known as the gatekeeper because students that don't pass it cannot get their advanced Regents diploma. So it's a huge deal for any high school to have as many of those students get their advanced as possible. So just a timeline about Algebra 2, what happened in the spring of 2015. The state sent out a memo to all high schools in the state mentioning that they probably won't allow the Algebra 2 Trig, which was the old Regents, to be used as a means of getting an advanced Regents diploma for the 2016 year. So we had a little bit of a panic session over that with the math department, and we decided we had to decide whether we were going to go with the new Common Core curriculum or take a risk and try to see if the state was going to let us in later on in the year do the old curriculum exam. But we didn't want to take that chance, and we figured we might as well be ahead of the game. And we spoke with Dr. Napolitano, with Mr. DeJaneiro, with Dr. O'Connor about it, and we all decided it would be best in the district's best interest and the students to just go ahead with the new Common Core curriculum, which is what we did. So I think we can go to the next slide. So we had a lot of PD in that summer of 2015. The teachers had a lot of extra assistance. They did workshops. We ordered textbooks. We went crazy. We really tried to prepare for this Regents. And with the help of central office and the board, we really did prepare. We had even Mr. Labor giving professional development to his fellow teachers and statistics, because there was a huge unit on statistical analysis in the new regions. So I think our teachers were pretty well prepared, and they even turnkeyed to their students with the new curriculum. So I want to go to the next slide so we can start looking at this. I think we're missing something. Can you go to the next one? Yeah, that's it. So I pulled up off of Lyric. I'm not sure if you're familiar with gap reports. You can design your own reports on Lyric. It's actually an amazing tool, which I love. So I pulled this report together for the Algebra 2, the Common Core. And these are our results from June 2016. Now, mind you, a lot of districts did not go with the new curriculum this year. They took the risk, they ran the risk of waiting one more year, and they were very lucky because the state decided in the fall of 2015 to allow them one more year to prepare. But we weren't sure of that. We weren't going to take the risk. Like I said, we went ahead and did the new curriculum. So these were the results right here on this gap report. This is only one page of probably 25 pages of data. But if you look at the ellipse there, the percent gap, what that tells you is the percent difference we had with the columns to the right. You can see the percent difference with BOCES and with the region, with Westchester. We had with others, with those entities. So the reason I circle is because you can see that they vary widely. But what I wanted to impress upon you is that that red box below was the only area, and those are performance indices to the left. You look at the performance index, you move to the right, you see what our percent, no, sorry, go back, okay. You see how much different we were from the region, from BOCES, and that red box below is the only one where we fell short of the rest of Westchester County, out of, I think it was about 80 different performance indices, which was amazing. And if you look at the circular or the ellipse, you could see that those differences, we have some low ones. The whole report looks like this. You have some low percentages, but we have some very high percentages. One of our differences with the rest of Westchester was 54%, which is huge. But the reason that this report is also very important, besides patting ourselves on the back, is that what teachers can do now is look at these performance indices, these standards, and see where they need to focus for the next year in instruction. And that's why this is so valuable, and that's why doing the Common Core this year was so valuable, because now we have an extra year to actually fine-tune what we did so well on. And if you go to the next slide, you can actually see how well we did compared to schools immediately around our area. We got 100% passing. Levels 3 and 4 is above a 65. And we've never done that with Algebra 2 Trig, and now we're doing the Common Core. And mind you, the curve was a pretty good curve for everybody, but if you look at the difference between us and other districts, we did very well. So the one that came closest is Dobbs Ferry, but if you look at like Lakeland, Mayapack, they didn't come close to us. So we did a great job in preparing for this regions, and again, with the help of the board and central office and Dr. Napolitano, we did a great job, and it's something to be proud of. The teachers are extremely happy about it, and the students were as well in June. So this is just the icing on the cake, is looking at the data and really processing how well we did. So now we're going to have Mr. DeGennaro again speaking about communications. Thank you.
The next slide is pretty self-explanatory. The only thing that's not mentioned there is accessibility. And in accessibility, in terms of the visible presence of our administrative team in the high school, whether it's in front of the building at the beginning of the day, the end of the day, visiting classrooms, in the hallways, attending events, a day doesn't go by that students aren't comfortable to come up and ask you questions or clarifications. So what I really wanted to show here is just the many forms that we've used to communicate with students and their families. And we're always looking for more ways to make sure that there's never a miscommunication or a lack of communication. I told the students when we met with them, and again, as well as the parents, there's really no excuse to ever come in and say, I didn't know, when we kind of go through that slide with them. So it's making sure that they're connected, they know, and again, it's worked pretty well for us. So in the last slide, I did want to talk a little bit about some of the initiatives for this year. The first bullet there, the tech newsletter, is something that I have a goal this year with Shannon Mersan that we're going to collaborate on to put out a couple editions of a technology newsletter to show you all the show everybody all the wonderful things that go on with educational technology in the high school. Our continued growth of community service, the numbers seem to grow every year. For the class of 2017, which still obviously has this whole year ahead of them, Mrs. Miro sent me the following data. They've completed already over 25,000 hours of community service. 193 out of 300 students have participated in the community service program, and 10 students in the class of 2017 have completed already 400 or more hours, which is just impressive numbers. So they will arguably be the most accomplished class in terms of community service as they move through their senior year. The third bullet down, expanding Big Buddy roles for at-risk students and transfers. It's an area that we've talked about. We're going to plan this year, going into next year, to expand out the Big Buddy program, not just for the transition to high school at the beginning of the year, but ongoing during the course of the year. Ms. Brand had mentioned the building level professional development committee, and again, the last bullet there, continued curricular vertical alignment for the Common Core courses. So what I would like to say in summary is that we continue to think deeper and look forward to support the well-rounded and daily growth of our students, and truly appreciate the incredible support that all of you up there at the table provide for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much. Very thorough presentation. Thank you. Did anybody have any questions?
No questions, just I really like the data-driven approach. It's nice to see the data out there and being used for not just, as you say, patting ourselves on the back, but also to feed it back into the curriculum. So well done.
I think it's great that you're able to look with such detail at where the students do well and where they can improve, and then we would, again, base our own development on how we get that more correct so that they would only continue to do better. So I think that's great. I think Debbie also, looking at 3 years of data for the Writing Center, demonstrates that it was something that, initially it was a little brave step to move that forward, but you can see that it was really well paid off. And Cindy, your explanations help because, again, numbers can say, well, it's 0.7, is that a big deal? But I think you made a very important point. As class sizes go down, the number of students taking the exams have gone up, and even with the numbers of students increasing who are taking exams, the grades continue to increase. I think I calculated 89, and I didn't have Steve Labor to help me, but I think I calculated about 89% of the students taking AP courses achieved a grade of 3 to 5. And you did highlight that many of those AP courses don't require criteria, and others do. You wouldn't expect somebody to just get into BC Calculus if they didn't have the appropriate prerequisites. It wouldn't serve them well, and that's for sure. And Jim, as far as the data for the alternative program, I thought it was impressive. I think it speaks well of the district, as we've watched the numbers diminish over the years, because again, it appears that many things are happening from grade to grade that allow students who in the past would not have fit easily into a large high school, a traditional high school setting, fit very comfortably. And that's really a credit to everybody, not only at the high school, but people coming up, teachers coming up the grade who are instructing the students. I also think it's really a very good thing that you don't say, okay, what do we do next? You already find ways that we make the resources available to all of our students, whether it's credit recovery or, as all of your teachers are doing now, instructing classes within the traditional high school environment. I don't look at you so much anymore as the director of the A school. I see you as somebody who's critical to the high school, because you've done a lot of things in the high school that need attention, and credit recovery would be perhaps an example of that. I don't know what I'm leaving out, so forgive me, because I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out, and I don't mean to do that. And Joe, again, just from the perspective of looking at initiatives and thinking about how schools continue to get better, that's always important, because the easiest thing to say is that we're doing better than we did than the year before. But really looking at it and saying, okay, we've done some things better. What can we do to continue to improve, to continue to develop, and to continue to grow and expand? And I love the idea of how really the one number that you gave, as we look at all, as Tom Donatelli points out, looking at all of these different statistics, and whether it's academics or in exams, I thought the number that jumped out at me most was the fact that the increase to character development and also service to the community. It's very impressive to know that, again, with fewer students, the numbers of hours continue to go up, and the students seem to take it very seriously and take great pride in the fact that these are things they can be doing and should be doing. It started out with the idea that we want you to, and now I think it doesn't matter what we want. I think they want to, and that's more important. So I'm very pleased with the report. I think it really, gives a real overview of what's happened in a month. So there's greater things to happen in the 9 months ahead. And I just wondered if that was you in the racing car, or if it was somebody else that was racing. Okay. Well, we thank you for the report. It was very good, and thank you all for coming. And Sue, I know you didn't have to be here, but it's great to have you here. Yeah, I figured you were here in case anybody needed some psychological counseling as the report was being given. Oh, my slide is up, what am I going to say? But thank you for coming, and thank you all.
We appreciate everything. Thank you very much.
So at this point, we're going to let Dennis go too, yes? Mm-hmm. And David, and do we need David? We need David, I'm sorry, never mind. And we need Mike.
Yeah, we need Patrice for 1 second, because my Chromebook
great.
is dead.
Do we have any more Chromebooks?
My Chromebook is dead. No, it's not charging. It won't find the internet. Well, Mike and I are sharing right now.
We're sharing.
How's that working?
So, but it's working fine. We just can't get this one working, which is a bit of a problem. We need some minor.
It just won't connect to board
Oh.
docs. Everything else works for it. We booted in and
This is the second
logged
week
in
in a
and
row
out.
with this.
Yeah. There must be some setting.
Oh, did he?
So we're going to do the education report now? Okay.
Do you want,
We're ready.
Do you want a minute?
No, we're good.
I'm going to go to the podium.
We can share.
Okay, great.
Wait, then maybe you can- Okay, I'm gonna touch these. I'm way down, let's sit on my hands.
Good evening. The education report tonight is going to focus on the ELA and math grades 3 through 8 assessment data. We're going to look at comparisons between the last 2-year cohorts, progress on the ELA and math state assessments. We're also going to compare our performance, our students' performance during last school year's ELA and math tests to what has happened statewide. With me tonight is David Lease, the Director of Student and Evaluation Data, and we're going to share an overview, different than what you've just seen from the high school, which was an in-depth analysis of some aspects of the Common Core Algebra 2 regions. We're looking at an overview of the cohort performance. We're not going to be sharing subgroup performance at this point, but just an overview. If you look at the first slide, you'll see the purple line with the diamonds reflects the 2015 performance of our students, and the blue line represents the 2016 performance of our students on grades 3 ELA, grades 3 through 8 ELA assessments. The percentage is indicating the standards of proficiency, that percentage of students has met a standard of proficiency. So when we look across that information, we can see that our students have maintained or showed growth in all grade levels except 6th grade. That is something we're going to be delving deeper into. We do know that that was also the trend statewide, but it just gives us an opportunity to be able to see where we have shown growth from one year to the next. This slide shows how we This slide shows our grades 3 through 8 English language arts performance on last year's 2016 exam compared to the state average. Yorktown is represented by the dark blue line, and the state average is represented by the light blue line. So you can see we are above the state average in all of our grade levels.
Now we'll take a look at our mathematics performance in grades 3 through 8, district-wide. So the first thing you're looking at again is the summary between the 2015 and 2016 cohorts. You may notice a little bit more differentiation between the grade levels, but if we take a closer look at the assessment a little bit, what I really want to point out is more, not so much of the year-to-year differences, because if you look at it just that way, you might see a big increase in grade 5 and a larger dip in grade 6. But really, if you look at the 2015 diamond for 5th grade and the 2016 circle for 6th grade, you see that we actually make an increase between the grade levels. So I was removing grade to grade. We're increasing the performance level for that cohort. The difference in the cohort to cohort data, where you see those gaps, really has to do with the assessment design. We noticed this trend the year before with the 5th grade, so it doesn't surprise me that that gap translated up into the 6th grade. It's not something that we were unexpecting. And as we move forward, what we do is we now will take this data and disaggregate it and tie it to the curriculum work we do and start breaking it down to how can we hone in on the specific skills and standards that are within these areas to enhance our student performance and growth. But again, overall, similarly to ELA, what we do notice if we look across the continuum against New York State assessments, we're performing well above, anywhere from 5% to 45% above New York State averages across the grade continuum, 3 through 8.
So these past 4 slides really just show an overall look of how we're performing in grades 3 through 8 ELA and math. What we do with this information and how we delve deeper is really what's important. So the next couple of slides we want to share are how do we use or apply this information to support student growth. And when we look at the superintendent's action plan that was developed off of the board goals, we can see that we can use this data to address several of the areas under the superintendent's action plan. So the first one of the items under the superintendent's action plan is to utilize student data to develop and guide instruction. We've been able to utilize this information quickly and efficiently this school year because for the first time ever, the state has released 75% of the test questions, and they were released by June of 2016. Having access to this percentage of questions really gives us an opportunity to pinpoint where our students were deficient, where they were strong, and what we need to do to rectify some of those areas of weakness. The early release of the questions allowed us to start an earlier analysis of the data, and we utilized this information to support our summer curriculum work. By looking at the questions as they came out, by looking at the data as we delved deeper into individual student performance, we were able to gain an insight into the amount of reading comprehension skills that were required to be successful on the math assessment. And we've been able to focus our work moving forward on cross-curricular activities. So for example, how will we use ELA strategies and skills to help solve multi-step math problems? We've identifying ELA vocabulary that is applicable when solving math word problems. So for example, we use the word gist as part of our reading comprehension vocabulary. What's the gist of what you're reading? Children are used to that when they're reading a reading comprehension passage. We need to translate that type of vocabulary into math word problems so that we're finding skills that translate between the curriculum areas.
And again, just looking at this data from a summative point of view, we speak to one of the other board goals, which is to develop and implement standards-based assessments that are linked to K-5 modules across ELA and mathematics. So when I talk about a standards-based assessment, typically when we look at assessments, we might look in terms of performance, about where students performed well, where they didn't perform well, what they got right, what they got wrong, but really what does that mean? So what we did in this curriculum work over the summer was really start breaking down the items and mapping them to the questions to the skills and standards that they related to. So when we look at the data now, we can actually see which standards and skills we need to focus on. So we're not just looking at how many right and wrong did we get and where we can actually pinpoint a map and a direction that will help teachers really design focused and targeted instruction in the classroom for their student needs, differentiation, setting up groups, and really breaking down how they do their instruction and deliver the material to focus on specifically what the students are needing and in the areas that they need them. We also get to do this in real time, so we're providing real time to teachers through these assessments that focus, again, them on their instruction and targeting the specific needs of their students.
And as with everything that we do, and you heard also with the high school report, we continue to integrate the Common Core learning standards and correlate the Engage New York modules to our curriculum instruction and assessment. We are continuing to curriculum mapping at every grade level. We're aligning to the Common Core, and as David was speaking, we are developing standard-based assessments directly from the questions that were released on the exams as well as the Engage New York modules. I think when we look at when I asked David to present this information with me tonight, the curriculum department and the data department work so closely to be able to make sense of this information and how does the data from the assessments drive our curriculum and our instruction. With this information, we were able to, before the school year even started, have a meeting with all of the principals, the K-8 principals, look at this information, make some decisions of how we were going to move forward, what were our key areas, what were the areas of focus that our math and ELA coaches were going to work on at our K-5 level. So we really got off to a strong start so far this year, and we're looking forward to continuing to build on all of the data that we collect and how we can make some decisions for students moving forward. So, thank you. Do you have any questions?
Oh, thank you. First, another data-driven one. We like this. Any
This was an
questions?
overview, not a
It's
specific
okay. It's
advice.
good. There's a lot of data there. Any questions?
Sure. I think, David, you talked about providing real-time data to teachers. So would you be able to speak to some ways that you might be looking to do that?
Certainly. So we're using technology through a learning management system to actually develop these assessments. So we're pulling in the actual question banks from New York State and from Engage New York, and we're tying the questions right to the standards. They're built right into the program. So essentially, when we're delivering our assessments, we're doing it in an electronic fashion. Either for the lower grades, we give them bubble sheets that get scanned into the computer, and it will break them down by item and by standard and skills, so the teachers have a real-time report on exactly how their students performed and where and what areas they need to focus on. From a secondary level, we can do this in an online fashion, so everywhere where we have our Chromebook initiatives and our one-on-one initiatives, we can do this online. So not only am I getting it in real time, but as it's happening, as a teacher, I'm monitoring the class performance. And on the fly, I can make adjustments to what's happening in the classroom.
Terrific. Thank you.
Can we just clarify that the way you're doing this, we're not teaching to the test. You're modifying the teaching so that they're learning the skills, not necessarily the questions to answer, correct?
That's correct. So when we map the standards to the questions and we get the results, we're actually looking at what standards and skills are my students performing well on. You want to jump in here, but as we map that and look at the performance, it's going to help me and reflect on what I'm doing in the classroom as a teacher and help me design the instruction and the adjustments I need to make to meet the needs of the students.
So I just want to be clear, we were looking to make common assessments so that all of our teachers were administering assessments that were directly related to the standards so that we would understand where our students were weak before we get to the ELA and math tests in the spring. So these common assessments that were developed we would always be assessing our students throughout the time, but this is a common assessment that is directly linked to the Common Core. And it gives us information to be able to teach towards the Common Core, which will then help our performance in the state tests.
And what I think makes it more powerful for us is rather than looking at an annual snapshot of state assessment data, it's relevant to what's happening right now in the classroom. So this may be in the form of an exit ticket, it may be in the form of a unit exam, but at the end of the day, it's what's happening now, so I can make adjustments right now to what's happening in my classroom.
I think it's great. The reason I asked the question was I know we're not doing that, but I know that was a big complaint when Common Core came in, as opposed to your strengthening skills that they can transfer to other areas. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
I know, actually, Mr. O'Shea had just alluded to the fact that the New York State assessments aren't the only assessments that we use. What other assessments do you use?
So depending on the grade level and depending on what we're administering, we never rely on one aspect or one measure to judge our student performance. So we do have locally developed assessments such as the ones we were just talking about. We have the state data. We have our STAR assessment data now, that's K-8 and moving up to 9th grade this year. So we do have various data points that we're looking at to help us make our decisions. Just for some information for the board, our response to intervention plan is being revised as we speak, and at each grade level there are different types of data that we're looking at for making decisions, whether it be the student is performing well or the student needs some additional support, and what type of support do they need. So depending on the grade level, we do have multiple measures. The STAR is a big one now that we're using consistently, K through 8, K through 9 starting this year.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just, yeah, one other question. Does the database allow you to compare our scores to other schools in our region or our cohort, or is it just New York State average?
So in the first set of slides that you looked at, we were looking at things through a lens where we can compare to state or other cohort districts around the area, whether it be Westchester County, whether it be part of the BOCES consortium. We can certainly do that. In terms of our localized assessments, we're really focused on what are we doing here and how will that drive us in what we're doing in our practice. So to answer your question, not to be too vague, we can do it both ways. I think the primary function of the summative stuff, we can break down how we look at it, but at the end of the day, what we're really focused on is how does that affect us in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Good, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Great.
Committees. Okay, we're up to committee reports. So we're going to start with the audit committee. Tom?
Okay, we've got an audit committee meeting coming up next week on October 5th. The external auditor will be in to review the results of the external audit, so we should be ready to present that to the board in one of the next 2 October meetings.
We only have one October meeting, right?
Yes.
What happened to the 17th and the 24th? No? Which one is it? Ah, okay, well, we better put it on the 17th then. Good thing we hedged our bets and didn't rely on just one. So that'll be the agenda where we'll see that in the public session. And the internal auditors have started the intensive review on the payroll area.
Okay.
So I'm not sure, Tom, do you know approximately when we'll have those results?
I don't know when I have the results. They were here 3 days last week. So.
Okay, so as soon as we do, we'll let you know.
Terrific. Okay. Fiscal advisory, Mike?
Nothing really new fiscal advisory right now. We've been working with the district on the capital reserve fund discussion, but nothing's changed since the last time.
Okay. Policy, Cheryl?
Moving right along, meeting monthly with the policy committee. At every board meeting, we will have some updates or some that may be deleted. So we're, quickly going through and reviewing and making sure that they get farmed out to the various departments for updates. And as we need to vote on changes, we'll be bringing them to the Board of Ed meetings.
Terrific. All right, and then steering, we're still waiting to finish a punch list from the summer work. We are still working on that. We still have quite a bit of stuff to do. We are starting a steering committee meeting tomorrow. Dennis wanted one to start to talk about the cash projects that we're doing for this coming up summer. So we will be discussing those and seeing where we go after tomorrow's meeting. All right. We're up to personnel. Okay, I'm not going to touch it now. I'm sorry, my computer is very slow. Not even mine right now.
It's not working. She said she can't get it to work.
Can I have a hard copy of everything? I'm sorry. Oh, thank you. Okay. Can I have, upon recommendation of the superintendent, a motion, I'm just going to go from here, that the following be approved? We have certified personnel, teaching assistant change in hours, seasonal substitute appointments, amendment appointments, teaching stipends, extra duty, coaches, co-curricular extra duty. We have volunteers. Under classified personnel, we have an appointment. We have our 16-17 police monitors, seasonal and substitute appointments, and we have other compensation.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Yvette, can I have a copy of the agenda? Because I'm
I think it's
No,
board
I don't know.
docs.
It's board docs, it's not, can I just borrow this a second, Ralph?
Yes,
I'm
please.
sorry. I'm sorry, I'm just going to go over Ralph's. Board action items. Upon motion to approve the minutes of the July 12th, July 27th, and August 27th, 2016. 2016 board meetings.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Treasurer's report. A motion to accept the treasurer's report for August 2016.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Claims audit report. A motion to approve the claims audit report for August 2016.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Tom, I think I asked this before, but you're working with the claims auditor to work on a process for getting rid of the exceptions that we're seeing now?
We are now meeting with him after he concludes each round of audit, and we go over the list of open items with him.
Terrific. I mean, it's so nice to see it in this format now and know what the exceptions were and that we can work towards fixing them. So thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Extra classroom activity fund, a motion to approve the extra classroom activity fund report for August 2016.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Policies. Now, this is a long one, so we got a few of them. A motion, be it resolved that the following policies shall be deleted from the policy manual because they are either obsolete, unnecessary, or included within other policies, and there is a whole list of them.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Already feels lighter. Policy adoption. This is a motion for a first read and an adoption of the following policies. Policy 4325 and its regulation, which is AIS. Policy 4321.2, school-wide pre-referral approaches and interventions. 4321.6, availability of alternative format instructional materials for students with disabilities. 4321.7, district-wide and statewide assessments of, there's a typo there, students with disabilities. 4321.9, declassification of students with disabilities. 4321.11, public report on revision to district policies, practices, and procedures upon finding of significant disproportionation. And then we have a motion to readopt and amend policy 8130, school safety plans and teams, and policy 4321.5, individualized education program distribution. We're going to a motion to review and readopt policy 3100, superintendent of schools, policy 432113, preschool education.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, that was a lot of work. We have gotten far, though. Curriculum and instruction. A motion to approve the following Yorktown Association of Administrators and Supervisors professional improvement proposals. Below, they're for Deb Rand and John Gollitz.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Business office, a motion to extend the intermunicipal agreement with the town of Yorktown for the 16-17 school year.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? District-wide safety plan, be it resolved, the Yorktown Central School District will hold a public hearing on Monday, October 17th for the district-wide safety plan.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, this is required by state law?
It is.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Change orders, a motion to approve the following change orders. They are all add-ons for the summer work.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? External auditing services, a motion to extend the agreement with the firm of Ray Pruser for external auditing services for the years ending June 30th, 2017, and June 30th, 2018 for compensation in the amount of $27,500 per year as per the RFP dated November 27, 2012.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? School physician agreement. A motion to approve the agreement with Dr. Louis Casaro, school physician for the 16-17 school year.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Athletic announcer. A motion to approve the athletic announcers agreement for the 16-17 school year at a rate of $125 per game, not to exceed $5,600 for the 16-17 school year.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Budget transfers. A motion to approve the following budget transfers.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Contract approval for ARIS. A motion to approve a contract with ARIS Contracting Company for construction management services for our cash-based capital projects.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Special education. A motion to approve the following special education placements for September 26, 2016. Yes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Amendment to renewal and extension settlement and release agreement. Resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the terms of the amendment to the renewal and extension of settlement and release agreement involving the student alternate ID 4327, and be it further resolved that the superintendent of schools is authorized to execute such agreement.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Surplus. A motion to declare the item listing of word processing standalone keyboarding machines as surplus materials. These materials are damaged, cannot be repaired, and are outdated. They are non-functioning and of no monetary value.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Summer school education contract. A motion to approve the summer school education 2016-17 contract with Ardsley Union Free School District for the placement of 3 students as per the IEP.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are up to board comment. Christine, thank you. Christine?
I'm
Board
good,
comment.
thank
You're
you.
good?
I'm good.
Cheryl?
Actually, I just wanted to comment on the high school's presentation. I just think that, we've done a great job over the years staying ahead of the curve and being proactive, and I think that the data that they presented tonight really supported that. So I would just really commend them on that.
Terrific. Tom?
Nope, I'm good.
I'm good, thank you.
Mike?
Look good.
I'm good too. Just remind you, there's still a lot of sports going on. Come out and support our teams and all the other in-school activities that are going on. Ralph, Lisa, Tom, anything?
1 month over.
All right.
Hard to believe.
Anybody from the public wishing to comment? All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.